In the manicured suburbs of Philadelphia, everyone knew Dr. Audrey Holt was the gold standard of devoted wives. She was the brilliant, high-powered chief of thoracic surgery at University Hospital. But the moment she was home, her world revolved around her husband, Liam Asher. If Liam forgot to eat, she'd drive across town in the dead of winter to pick up the artisanal pizza he loved. If his stomach acted up, she was the one brewing ginger tea and finding the exact medication he needed. He once mentioned offhandedly that he missed the smell of the lilac bushes from his childhood home in Ohio, and for the next 10 years, she cultivated a garden bursting with them. The neighbors would tease, "Audrey, you didn't get a husband. You got a king you wait on hand and foot." Audrey would just smile, a quiet, knowing look on her face, her gaze on Liam so tender it could melt steel. But what touched Liam's heart the most were their children's names. They had twins, a boy and a girl, perfect and adored by all. When they were born, Audrey had held them, her expression thoughtful, and said, "The boy will be Morgan. The girl, Dawn." A warmth spread through Liam's chest. He remembered a line from a poem they'd once read together. "In this fleeting world of 1,000 things, you are my morning, you are my dawn." He thought it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to him. He lived in that bliss for 5 years. Until their 5th anniversary, Liam was walking with Morgan and Dawn, heading to the best bakery in town to buy a special cake. As they passed the duck pond in the community park, a man in a crisp, white shirt stepped in front of him. "Hello, I'm Cole Morgan. I was Audrey's first love." The name hit Liam like a physical blow, 2 distinct shocks that left him dizzy, the blood draining from his face. What did you say your name was?" "You heard me right, Liam. The names of your children? She chose them for me, to remember me. We were in love, deeply in love." Cole Morgan seemed oblivious to Liam's shattered expression, his voice a soft, gentle weapon that sliced through Liam's nerves. He spoke of a past where he and Audrey had been the couple everyone envied, their love of force of nature. But then, he'd been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer. He was told he didn't have long. To save her from the pain of watching him die, to protect her brilliant future, he had broken her heart, ending things in the cruelest way possible. Audrey had been destroyed. She'd shown up at his door again and again, even kneeling in the rain, begging him to take her back. He'd ignored her, steeling himself against her pleas. "I thought I was dying," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just wanted her to forget me and live a good life. But I had a follow-up last week. The doctors, they said it was a misdiagnosis. I'm fine, Liam. I'm completely fine, and I can love her again." He took a desperate step forward, grabbing Liam's arm. "I know my timing is terrible. I didn't know she was married until I found her. But Audrey and I are meant to be. We were only separated by a tragic mistake. Please, I'm begging you, give her back to me." He recounted all the ways Audrey had loved him, the little things she did, her memory of his every preference. Some of them felt unervingly familiar to Liam. A deep, numbing cold seeped into Liam's bones. Cole's voice was a meaningless drone in his ears. It felt like he couldn't hear, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. How could the woman who held him tight in her sleep, who put him before everything, have been secretly holding on to another man for 5 years? "No, that's impossible," he whispered, his face ashen. He pulled his children closer, needing to escape. "Audrey, she's not like that. I know you don't believe me." Cole's grip tightened, his eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp intensity. "So let's make a little bet. Right now." Before Liam could process his words, Cole shoved him aside and gave the 2 small children, who were crouched at the water's edge looking at the ducks, a hard, deliberate push. "Daddy!" The children's screams and the sound of splashing water exploded at the same time. "Morgan! Dawn!" Liam's mind went blank with terror. He lunged for the water, but Cole jumped in too, yanking him back just enough to throw him off balance. Liam's ankle twisted violently. A searing pain shot up his leg, a muscle cramping into a useless knot. He collapsed at the edge of the pond, half submerged in the cold, murky water, paralyzed by the agony in his leg. Just then, he heard frantic footsteps. It was Audrey. She must have just gotten off her shift, still dressed in her smart blouse and slacks, her figure poised and strong. "Help! Mommy, help us!" The twins were flailing in the water, their little heads bobbing as they choked and cried. Liam's heart shattered. He tried to crawl forward, but his leg wouldn't obey. "Audrey!" he screamed at the approaching figure. "The kids! Get the kids!" Audrey dove into the water with a powerful splash, but she swam straight for Cole Morgan. Liam watched, frozen in horror, as she reached Cole and pulled his head above the water. Cole immediately clung to her like a drowning man, his arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "Audrey!" he gasped, his voice a mixture of weakness and triumph. I knew you'd come for me. Audrey held him, her voice tight with a gentleness Liam had never heard before. Don't be afraid. I'm taking you to the hospital right now. She started swimming toward the bank, supporting Cole, her back turned completely to the desperate cries of her children and the despairing gaze of her husband. In that moment, something inside Liam broke. He remembered teaching her to swim years ago. She had swallowed a mouthful of water and clung to him, whining that she'd never learn. He'd wiped the water from her face and said, "We'll take it slow. As long as I'm here, nothing will ever hurt you." But now, she was the one inflicting the deepest wound. "Daddy." The sound of his children's cries pierced through his shock. Instinct overrode the pain. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the fire in his ankle, and clawed his way through the water, using every last ounce of strength to push his terrified children toward the shore. He saw them crawl onto the grass, coughing and crying, and his strength finally gave out. The world went black. When he woke up, he was in a hospital room. The first thing he heard was that the children were okay, and a knot of tension in his chest finally loosened. But the image of them in the water played over and over in his mind. He had to see them. He ripped the 4 from his arm and stumbled out of the room. As he passed the room next door, a familiar voice drifted through the partially opened door, striking him like a bolt of lightning. Through the crack in the door, Liam saw Cole Morgan sitting up in the hospital bed, his arms wrapped tightly around Audrey's waist, his voice choked with tears. "Audrey, I just need an answer. It's been 5 years. Do you still love me?" Audrey stood with her back to the door, her body rigid. The silence stretched on, so long that Liam felt like he couldn't breathe. Finally, she spoke, her voice raspy. "Yes." A single word, sharp and final, that made the world go dark around Liam. Cole's emotions intensified. "You love me, and I love you. Why can't we be together?" He tilted his head up, pulling her into his arms, and pressed his lips to hers. Audrey's body went stiff for a second, then seemed to melt. A torrent of long-suppressed passion broke free, and she kissed him back with a desperate, hungry intensity. They clung to each other, lost in the moment. After what felt like an eternity, she seemed to come to her senses. She pushed him away, her breathing ragged, her voice a low, pained whisper. "Cole, I do love you, but I'm married. I have a family, children, maybe in the next life. In the next life, I promise I'll be with you." Liam couldn't watch anymore. He turned to flee, to escape this suffocating truth. In his haste, his shoulder bag slipped and crashed to the floor, its contents scattering across the linoleum. As he knelt to gather his things, his fingers brushed against a small, hardbound notebook he didn't recognize. He didn't remember putting it in his bag. On a strange impulse, he opened it. The first page was all it took for his blood to turn to ice. It was Audrey's handwriting, a journal filled with the story of her past with Cole Morgan. Page after page was filled with a fiery, all-consuming love for Cole. Page after page detailed her devastation, her despair, her disbelief when he'd suddenly broken up with her. She had begged him, waited for him, nearly destroyed her career over him. The very last entry was dated the day before their first date. "Dreamed of him again. The ache in my chest is still so sharp. Maybe it's time to really move on. Find someone suitable, get married, fulfill my obligations. Maybe then I can forget him." So that's all he was. Liam Asher, the suitable choice, the tool she used to get over a broken heart, the affection he'd cherished, the tenderness he'd drowned in. It was all a performance, meant for another man. She saw right through him. An immense, crushing weight of grief and betrayal settled over him. He leaned against the wall, gagging, but nothing came up. His body trembled uncontrollably. He couldn't stand it for another second. He couldn't share a bed with a woman whose heart was so completely occupied by someone else. He went straight to the county courthouse. Ignoring the clerk's surprised look, he filed the divorce papers with a chilling resolve. "Sir, divorce is a serious step, especially with 2 children involved. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider? We can set you up with a mediator." "No mediation," Liam said, his voice hoarse but steady with the calm of a dead heart. "Please, just process it as quickly as you can." "All right, we'll process the petition. You'll be notified of any updates." When he got back to their house, the children ran to him, wrapping their arms around his legs. "Daddy, you're finally home. Daddy, we were so scared." Liam knelt, pulling them into a tight embrace, feeling their small, warm bodies against him. His heart ached with a dull, constant pain. That night, after he'd put the frightened children to bed, he watched their peaceful faces in the dim light, a wave of sorrow washing over him. "Morgan, Dawn, if Mommy and Daddy have to separate, if you don't live with Mommy anymore, would you want to come with me?" The children weren't fully asleep. Their eyes fluttered open, and they sat up, tears welling instantly. "No, we don't want you to divorce Mommy," Morgan cried out first. Dawn's voice was a choked sob. "We want Daddy and Mommy." Liam's heart felt like it was being torn in two, but he held back his own tears, his tone firmer than he'd ever used with them. "I'm sorry, my loves, but Daddy has to leave Mommy. If you want to stay with her, I'll come visit you all the time." He couldn't finish. Dawn wiped her eyes with the back of her little hand and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I'm going with you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Mommy's mean. She only saved that other man. She didn't save me and Morgan." Morgan burrowed into his other side, sobbing quietly. "Yeah, I'm going with Daddy. Maybe you can find us a new Mommy. A better one." Liam hugged them both, his own tears finally falling in the silent darkness. The next evening, Audrey came home. She brought Cole with her. Seeing Liam, a flicker of discomfort crossed her face before she launched into a practiced explanation. "Liam, this is Cole Morgan, an old friend from college. Yesterday, you both fell in the water, but his health is fragile, so I had to get him to the hospital first. I figured you know how to swim, so you could get the kids out on your own." She paused. "His new apartment isn't ready yet, so he'll be staying with us for a few days." Liam just watched her, not bothering to call out the lie. The children heard the voices and came running out. When they saw Cole, they shrank back, hiding behind Liam's legs. Audrey frowned. "Morgan, Dawn, say hello. Where are your manners?" Cole immediately smoothed things over. "It's okay, Audrey. They're just shy." Audrey's expression softened. "I've spoiled them, I suppose. You must be hungry. I'll start dinner." Cole followed her into the kitchen. "I can help." Liam stood in the doorway, watching them. Audrey, tall and graceful. Cole, handsome and gentle, standing side by side at the stove, murmuring to each other. They looked like a perfect picture. He heard Cole's voice, thick with emotion. "I can't believe after all these years, you still remember I love carbonara and arugula salad with pine nuts." Audrey's stirring paused for a fraction of a second. "Yes," she said, her voice low. "I always remembered." Liam's heart clenched, as if spattered by the hot oil in the pan. So that was it. 4 or 5 years. She made those same 2 dishes at least once a week. Liam preferred spicier food, something with a kick, but he'd never complained. He saw how much care she put into it, and had slowly grown accustomed to the taste. He'd always assumed it was just what she liked to eat. Only now did he understand. Every time she chopped the garlic, grated the cheese, and tossed the pasta, the person she was thinking of, the person she was cooking for, was another man. Every second they had been together, she had been looking right through him, missing Cole Morgan. At dinner, Audrey kept putting more pasta on Cole's plate. Cole, in turn, smiled and tried to stir the children. "Here you go, Morgan, Dawn. Eat up so you can grow big and strong." The moment his fork came near their plates, the children snatched their bowls away. "No, we don't want your food. You're a bad man. Go away." Cole's hand froze midair. His brow furrowed, and he shot a wounded look at Audrey. Audrey's face hardened instantly. "Morgan Asher, Dawn Asher, who taught you to be so rude?" The children had never heard their mother speak with such fury. They flinched, and then both burst into tears. Liam's chest tightened. He pulled them into his arms. "Why are you yelling at them? We were having a nice dinner." But Audrey wasn't listening. Her eyes were cold as she stared at the children. "Apologize to Uncle Cole." "Now, Audrey, it's fine, really. Don't scare the kids." Cole tugged at her sleeve, his voice quavering, which only seemed to fuel her anger. Audrey stood up and pulled the children toward her. "I said apologize." Her grip on their small wrists was painfully tight. Their crying grew louder, choked sobs mixing with mumbled apologies. Liam looked at the woman before him, a stranger in his wife's body, and felt a wave of suffocation. In the past, no matter how much trouble the kids got into, she had been endlessly patient, never once raising her voice. Now, to defend another man, she was showing them a side of herself he never knew existed. The dinner ended in ruins. After finally calming the children and putting them to bed, Liam walked out of their room, emotionally exhausted. As he passed the guest room, he heard quiet voices. Audrey was sitting on the edge of Cole's bed, a book in her hand, reading aloud in a low murmur. Cole was propped against the headboard, a gentle smile on his face, his eyes fixed on her. And so, the little prince left his rose, but he never forgot her. Audrey's deep, melodic voice, the same voice that had been his and his children's lullaby, reading to him patiently on sleepless nights until he drifted off. So even that specific tenderness was just a shadow of what she'd given someone else. Was there anything between them that had ever been truly theirs? The pain in his chest spread, a dense web that made it hard to breathe. He couldn't watch anymore and retreated to their bedroom. A short while later, the door opened and Audrey walked in. She smelled faintly of soap in the outdoors, as if she'd just washed her face on the back porch. "Are the kids asleep?" she asked, her voice back to its usual calm, as if the scene at the dinner table had never happened. Liam lay with his back to her and grunted a soft. She sat on the edge of the bed and was quiet for a moment. "Liam, you need to be stricter with Morgan and Dawn. They can't be so disrespectful to guests." Liam's voice was dry. "Audrey, do you know why they acted that way toward him tonight?" He paused. "Because he's the one who pushed them into the pond yesterday." The figure behind him went rigid. Then, a sharp denial. "That's impossible. Cole is the kindest person I know. He wouldn't hurt a fly." "Liam, I know you're angry that I saved him first, but you can't resort to making up vicious lies to slander him." Vicious lies? The irony was a bitter taste in his mouth. He rolled over, facing her shadowed form in the darkness. "Is Cole Morgan really just an old college friend? Not your first love?" Audrey was clearly stunned. A dead silence fell over the room. After a few seconds, as if he'd struck a nerve, her tone turned cold and defensive. "Of course not. You've always been my first and only love. If I had some great lost love in my past, don't you think I would have told you when we started dating?" When they first met, he'd been honest, telling her he'd never really been in a serious relationship. She had hesitated for just a moment before saying, "Me neither." Of course, she wouldn't tell him. The man she held deepest in her heart was a secret she'd keep from everyone, especially her husband. He was tired of fighting. He reached over and turned off the bedside lamp. "Let's just sleep." In the darkness, Audrey was quiet for a long moment. Then her arm snaked around his waist, her warm breath on the back of his neck a clear invitation. Liam's body tensed. He shoved her away. "I'm tired. Not tonight." Audrey froze, clearly surprised. They were intimate almost every night. He rarely refused her. After a moment of silence, she tried again, leaning in to kiss him. "Are you sure?" Liam turned his head away again, his voice firm. "I'm not in the mood." She lay behind him in silence for a long time before sighing and getting out of bed. "Fine. You get some sleep. I'm going to take a shower." Soon, the sound of running water filled the small house. Liam lay curled in bed, assuming she was just cooling off. But then, underneath the rush of the water, he heard something else. Low, broken moans, the sound of suppressed pleasure, and then a name, muffled but unmistakable, cut through the noise and pierced his ears. "Cole! Oh, Cole!" It was like a lightning strike to the skull. The blood in Liam's veins turned to ice. He stopped breathing. It wasn't just her habits, her memories, her tenderness. Even in their most intimate moments, the moments he had felt closest to her, the moments he thought were proof of her love for him, the man she was thinking of, the body she was craving, had always been someone else. He squeezed his eyes shut. Soon he could take the kids and be free. The next morning, Liam walked out of the bedroom with the children. In the living room, Audrey was speaking softly to Cole. "You've always wanted to see the research wing at the hospital, right? I'm free today. I can give you a tour." Dawn, holding her father's hand, looked up. "Mommy, you told me in Morgan your hospital was for sick people, and we couldn't ever go visit because we'd be in the way. Why does Uncle Cole get to go?" Morgan chimed in quietly, "Yeah, Mommy. You said we can't cause a disturbance." Liam's heart sank. He looked at Audrey, waiting. Audrey was clearly unprepared for the question. She faltered for a second. It's a special open house for family members this week. If you want to come, you can come too." The excuse was paper thin. Liam saw right through it. There was no open house. It was just a cover for her blatant favoritism. Even the children seemed to sense the unfairness. They were quiet and sullen on the way to the hospital, none of their usual cheerful chatter. Liam hadn't wanted to go, but seeing their sad faces, he swallowed his pain and went along. At the hospital, Audrey, dressed in her crisp white coat, was in her element. She walked with an air of authority, her posture elegant, drawing admiring glances from staff and patients alike. But her attention was entirely on Cole, her voice soft and her eyes gentle as she explained the complex machinery and research projects. She didn't even seem to notice the two small children trailing behind her, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and disappointment. Watching them, Liam felt 1,000 tiny needles piercing his heart. Just then, a nurse hurried over. "Dr. Holt, there's an urgent call for you in the department office. You're needed immediately." Audrey's brow furrowed. She turned to Liam and the others. "Go wait in the courtyard gazebo over there. I'll be back as soon as I'm done." With that, she strode away. In the gazebo, it was just Liam, the twins, and Cole. The moment Audrey was out of sight, the warmth vanished from Cole's face, replaced by a sneering contempt. "You've got some nerve, Liam. You know she loves me. You know your own children's names are proof of it. How can you stand to stick around?" Liam's hands clenched into fists. His face was pale, but he forced himself to remain calm. Don't worry. I'll be leaving her. Leaving? Cole scoffed. I don't see you leaving. I see you clinging to her like a parasite. Do you enjoy being the other man, destroying a real relationship? The other man? Liam looked him straight in the eye. Do I need to remind you that I'm her legal husband? The one who isn't loved is always the third wheel. Don't you get that? Don't you talk to my daddy like that? Though they didn't understand the words, Morgan and Dawn sensed the malice. Like two furious puppies, they rushed forward to defend their father, giving Cole a hard shove. Cole stumbled back. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Audrey walking toward them. A flicker of cunning crossed his face. With a theatrical gasp, he let himself fall backward, positioning his head to crack squarely against the edge of a stone bench. A trickle of blood immediately welled up on his forehead. Cole! Audrey's face went white. She ran over, her voice laced with panic as she helped him up. What happened? How did you fall? Cole sagged against her shoulder, his eyes instantly red-rimmed and tearful. He looked sadly at the children, then quickly shook his head. It's nothing, Audrey. The kids, they just don't like me very much. It was an accident. I can get it bandaged myself. Please don't be angry with them. The more he defended them, the darker Audrey's expression became. She snapped her head up, her gaze landing on Liam like a physical blow. Liam, how are you raising these children? Why would you let them push someone? No, Mommy, Morgan cried out. He was saying mean things to Daddy. We were just protecting him. We didn't push him that hard. Yeah, he fell on purpose. Dawn added through her tears. Still lying. Audrey refused to believe them, her voice severe. You make a mistake, and you won't even admit it. Liam watched Cole's pathetic act and Audrey's unquestioning belief, and a chilling numbness spread through him. Audrey, they're 5 years old, he said, his voice strained. How could they possibly have the strength to push him hard enough to make him bleed? It's obviously. Obviously what? Audrey cut him off, her eyes like ice. I saw it with my own eyes. Are you saying I'm wrong? It's clear I've been too lenient with them, and now they're completely out of control. They need to be taught a lesson today. She turned to a nearby nurse and ordered sharply, Go to my office. Bring me the wooden yardstick. Audrey, no. Cole pleaded theatrically, tugging on her sleeve. They're just kids, that's too harsh. If you don't discipline them now, they'll grow up to be monsters. Audrey's tone was absolute. The yardstick was brought. With a grim face, Audrey grabbed Morgan's hand and brought the ruler down hard. The sharp crack echoed in the courtyard, followed by the child's piercing scream. No, Mommy, it hurts. Wah! Morgan's small palm was instantly red and swollen. Stop it. Audrey, stop. Liam's heart was being torn apart. He lunged forward to stop her, but two security guards materialized and held him back. Crack! Crack! As if deaf to the screams and pleas, Audrey grabbed Dawn's hand and struck her just as hard. The twins' cries were heartbreaking. Their little hands were welted and bruised, the skin breaking in places, showing pinpricks of blood. Liam, struggling against the guards, roared in agony. Audrey, stop! Are you even their mother? Audrey finally lowered the ruler. She looked at her children, who were sobbing hysterically, and a flicker of doubt crossed her face before it was replaced by anger. Now you're concerned? Where were you when they were being disrespectful? It's because of your coddling that they've become so brazen. She then gave an order to the guards. Take them to the far end of the courtyard. Make them kneel on the concrete until the sun goes down. They need to reflect on what they've done. No, they've just been hit. They can't take that kind of punishment. You'll kill them. Liam couldn't believe what he was hearing. But Audrey was resolute. She gave another order. Lock him in the security office. Let him out when the children's punishment is over. Yes, ma'am. Liam was dragged into a small, dark room. He pounded on the steel door, his voice raw. Let me out. Audrey, let the kids go. They'll die out there. After what felt like an eternity, he heard Audrey's footsteps stop outside the door. Liam, stop making a scene. Her voice came through the thick door, laced with exhaustion and impatience. I'm doing this for their own good. If they aren't taught a lesson now, they'll get into real trouble later. For their own good? Liam was on the verge of a breakdown. Audrey, I don't care how much you love Cole Morgan. You can't treat your own children like this. They're your babies. But the footsteps were already fading away. She hadn't heard him. Liam slumped to the floor in despair, the faint, agonized cries of his children drifting in from the courtyard, each sound like another turn of a knife in his heart. It wasn't until the sun began to set that the door was finally unlocked. Liam burst out and ran to the courtyard like a madman. The children were lying on the hot concrete, their faces flushed, their lips cracked. They had passed out. Morgan, Dawn. His soul left his body. He scrambled to them, gathering them in his arms. Their bodies were burning up, They were suffering from severe heat stroke and dehydration. He stumbled through the hospital, carrying them both, and ran toward Audrey's office. Just as he reached the door, he heard her gentle voice from inside. "Is your head still spinning? Maybe I should take you down to the ER for a full workup." Cole's voice was weak. "I'm okay, just a little tired." "No, I'm not taking any chances. We're going now." The office door opened, and Audrey emerged, helping Cole walk. They came face to face with Liam, his face a mask of terror, holding their unconscious children. The kids, they collapsed from the heat. "We have to get them to the ER now." Liam's voice trembled with panic. Audrey looked from Cole, who was looking equally unwell, to her unconscious children. Her brow furrowed, and for a split second, she hesitated. Cole chose that moment to speak. "Audrey, you should take the kids." I can wait." "What are you waiting for?" Liam screamed, seeing the indecision in her eyes. A cold dread washed over him. "Audrey, they're your children. They're dying." Finally, Audrey made her choice. She gave Cole a worried glance, then looked back at Liam. "Liam, you get them to the ER? Cole's not well either. I need to get him checked out first." With that, she turned, supporting Cole, and walked quickly past him, not giving the children another look. Liam stared at her retreating back, any remaining hope for her turning to dust. He gritted his teeth and ran toward the emergency room, his arms aching from the children's weight. But the ER was a mess. He was told all available residents were in a special consult for Cole Morgan. The nearest hospital was 3 miles away, and all the hospital transports were out. He would have to run. He burst out of the hospital doors, but carrying 2 5-year-olds, his energy gave out quickly. He staggered, nearly falling. Just then, a woman on an electric utility cart swerved to avoid a pedestrian and bumped into him. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" The driver, a maintenance worker, jumped off to help. Liam grabbed her arm like a lifeline, all composure gone. "Ma'am, please help me. My kids. You have to get us to St. Jude's. They're not breathing right. Please." The kind woman took one look at the children and didn't hesitate. "Get on. Hurry." She helped him load the children onto the back of the cart and sped off. The light above the trauma bay door lit up. Liam collapsed onto a bench in the waiting area, his entire body shaking. An eternity later, a doctor emerged, his expression grim. "Are you the children's father? Why did you wait so long to bring them in?" "They have severe heat stroke, extreme dehydration. A little longer, and they wouldn't have made it." Liam's legs gave out, and he slid to the floor, finally breaking down completely. Thankfully, the children were saved. He stayed by their bedsides, never leaving, watching their small, pale faces, his heart a raw, open wound. When they woke up, the first thing Morgan asked, his voice raspy with tears, was, "Daddy, when can we leave, Mommy?" Liam's eyes burned. He gently stroked their hair. "Soon. Daddy will take you far away from her very soon." Just then, the door opened, and Audrey walked in. "Leave who?" Liam turned his face away, unable to look at her. The children immediately scrambled to hide behind him, refusing to call her Mommy. Audrey sighed, aware of their anger. "I had to take Uncle Cole to the doctor first yesterday because he's not strong, and he only got hurt because you pushed him. It was my responsibility to make sure he was okay. See, you're both fine now, aren't you?" "Fine?" Liam thought with a bitter, silent laugh. They almost died. Over the next few days, Audrey was a rare sight, always finding an excuse to be with Cole. Liam had become numb to it. On the day of their discharge, Audrey, perhaps in an attempt to make amends, suggested a trip to a new amusement park. Then she brought Cole along. The three of them sat in silence on the car ride over. At the park, Audrey's attention was completely consumed by Cole. She rode the carousel with him, bought him a soda. They laughed together like a couple on a date. Liam watched from a distance, his heart too numb to feel anything. Later, Cole suggested they all take a picture together. After the photo was taken, Audrey went to pick it up from the booth. Liam happened to glance over and saw her get an extra copy of the family photo. Then, he watched as she carefully tore off the part with him and the children, leaving only the image of herself and Cole. She tucked it reverently into a special flap in her wallet. In that moment, a strange sense of relief washed over Liam. The last stubborn ember of love he held for Audrey Holt was finally extinguished. She went to wait in a long line to buy Cole an ice cream cone, completely oblivious to the longing looks her own children were giving the vendor. In the end, Liam bought them their own. "From now on," he whispered, "Daddy will buy you better things." The children nodded, their faces serious. Just then, a nearby kid with a water gun accidentally sprayed Liam, soaking his shirt. He excused himself to go to the restroom to clean up. "Watch the kids," he told Audrey. "Okay," she replied distractedly. When When Liam came back, he saw Audrey kneeling on the ground, gently massaging Cole's ankle, who had apparently twisted it. Her expression was full of tender concern, and the children were gone. A roar filled Liam's ears. He went completely insane. He lunged at Audrey, grabbing her shoulders. "Where are the kids? Where are Morgan and Dawn?" Audrey snapped back to reality, her head whipping around. Her face went pale. They were right here. "Audrey." Liam's voice was a raw, broken sound. "You were so busy rubbing his ankle you didn't watch your own children? What kind of a mother are you?" Panic seized her too. She found a park security officer, and a frantic search began. They scoured the park from afternoon until dusk. The crowds thinned, but there was no sign of the children. Liam's heart sank deeper with every passing minute, a cold tide of dread threatening to pull him under. Finally, in a remote corner of the parking lot, he saw it, a beat-up van. A woman was shoving a struggling, screaming Morgan into the side door, while another man held a hand over Dawn's mouth, her little face turning red. "Let go of my children!" A primal roar ripped from Liam's throat. He sprinted, a wild animal protecting its young, and threw himself at the woman, wrapping his arms around Morgan. "Get off me, you son of a bitch! Let go!" The woman, desperate, pulled out a knife and plunged it into Liam's side. Once, twice, a third time. Agony exploded through him, hot blood soaking his shirt, but he didn't feel it. He held on to his son, his grip like steel, and used his last breath to scream, "Help! They're taking my kids!" Liam, Audrey, and the security guards arrived, drawn by the scream. She saw the horrific scene, and her eyes went wide with terror. She and the guards swarmed the kidnappers, tackling them to the ground. The children were safe. Seeing them pulled away from the van, the adrenaline that had kept Liam conscious vanished. The world went black. He woke up in a hospital bed, a searing pain in his side. "The kids. Where are the kids?" Audrey rushed to his side, gently pressing him back down. "They're fine. Don't worry, I had them taken home. They're with a sitter. They're safe." Liam's eyes were bloodshot, wild with panic. "Are they at home? Or did you lose them again? Audrey, look me in the eye and tell me." "Liam." Her voice was stern. "They are my children. I carried them for 9 months. Why would you ever think I would abandon them?" "What about at the amusement park?" He shot back, the movement sending a fresh wave of pain through his wounds. He gasped. "Weren't you too busy with Cole's twisted ankle to watch them then?" "If it wasn't for you." He couldn't finish the sentence. The absolute terror of almost losing them washed over him again, leaving him trembling. Audrey was speechless, a look of shame and frustration on her face. She took a deep breath, went to the nurse's station outside his room, and dialed their home number. "Let me speak to Morgan and Dawn." A moment later, 2 small, tearful voices came through the receiver. Daddy, when are you coming home? We're scared." Hearing their voices, the crushing weight on Liam's chest finally lifted. He slumped back against the pillows, covering his mouth as silent. Racking sobs shook his body. Over the next few days, Audrey seemed genuinely remorseful. She stayed at the hospital, caring for him, bringing him food and water, even awkwardly helping him wash up. She had a young nurse come to his room every day to give him a detailed report on the children, what they ate, what they played with, how long they slept. Liam listened with a blank expression, his only thought to get better, to get back to them. But he wasn't deaf. More than once, he saw Audrey pull the nurse into the hallway after the report. He could hear her hushed, urgent whispers. "How's Cole? Is his ankle still hurting? Has he eaten? Is he doing okay?" The fragmented words drifted into his room like tiny, poisoned needles, piercing a heart that had already grown numb. He closed his eyes and pretended not to hear. A week later, Liam was discharged. Audrey came to pick him up, her arms full of new clothes, nutritional supplements, and a fancy box of Godiva chocolates. Back at home, the neighbors saw them and showered them with praise. "Oh, Dr. Holt takes such good care of her husband. Look at all this. Liam, you're a lucky man. Dr. Holt is a model wife." Only Cole, watching from the doorway, had a dark, unreadable expression. The next day, he quietly packed his bags. "Audrey, Liam, I've imposed on you for too long. My apartment is finally ready. I'll get out of your hair and let you get back to your family." Audrey's first instinct was to stop him, but she held herself back, watching him leave with a complicated look in her eyes. For a few days, a semblance of peace returned. Audrey came home on time, even sat down to do puzzles with the children. But Liam saw how she'd stare out the window, lost in thought. He saw how she'd unconsciously set a third place at the table, only to quickly put it away. And he heard the name she'd whisper in her sleep. Her heart had already left with him. Today was Liam's birthday. Audrey, perhaps trying to make up for everything, suggested they go into the city to a new bakery and then see a movie as a family. They were stopped at a red light halfway there when Liam glanced out the window. His gaze froze. On the sidewalk, Cole was walking with a woman in a smart business suit. They were laughing, their body language easy and familiar. At the same instant, Audrey saw them. Her face darkened into a terrifying mask. She wrenched the steering wheel, slamming the car to a stop at the curb. She threw the door open with a deafening bang and stormed toward them. Before Liam could react, Audrey had grabbed the woman by the collar and slapped her hard across the face. "Who the hell are you? Stay away from him." "Audrey, stop it," Cole cried, trying to pull her off. She's someone I was set up with on a date." "A date?" Audrey froze, staring at Cole in disbelief. "You're on a date?" Cole's eyes filled with tears. "What else was I supposed to do? You have a perfect family with Liam. You have your children, and you won't be with me. Am I just supposed to stay alone my whole life, waiting for you?" The words seemed to stab Audrey. She grabbed Cole and dragged him into a deserted alleyway, her voice a low, pained snarl. "You're not to go on dates. I forbid it. Do you hear me?" "On what grounds?" Cole demanded. "What right do you have?" "Audrey, if you can't let me go, then why don't you just divorce Liam? Give him some money, send him on his way, and we can be together. We love each other." As he spoke, he rose on his toes and kissed her, a desperate, reckless act. Audrey's body went rigid, and then it was as if a long-dormant volcano erupted. She took control, crushing him against the wall, kissing him back with a wildness that seemed to want to consume him whole. Liam sat in the car, watching the two figures tangled together in the alley. The numb, barren wasteland of his heart felt a flicker of sharp, residual pain. He got out of the car and walked home alone. But when he arrived, he found only Dawn, standing on the front porch, sobbing her heart out. Morgan was nowhere in sight. "Dawn, where's your brother?" Liam rushed to her. Dawn was crying too hard to speak. A neighbor saw him and sighed. "Liam, Dr. Holt came back in a hurry a little while ago, grabbed Morgan, and said she was taking him to the hospital. Something about donating bone marrow. To that Mr. Morgan, such a little boy. Bone marrow? For Cole." A roar filled Liam's head. He completely lost his mind. Outside the operating room, Audrey was pacing. "Audrey, where's Morgan? What have you done with my son?" Liam's voice was a raw scream as he tried to force his way into the OR. Audrey blocked him. "Liam, calm down." Cole collapsed. "He has leukemia and needs an emergency transplant. Morgan is a perfect match. It's just a donation. It's not life-threatening. We're saving a man's life." "Saving his life by sacrificing my son's?" Liam's eyes were bloodshot, his voice shrill with terror. "Why not find another donor? Why does it have to be my child? He's 5 years old. Let me go. I'm taking my son home." He fought to get past her. Fearing he would disrupt the procedure, Audrey acted on pure, cold instinct. She grabbed a syringe of sedative from a nearby cart and expertly plunged it into the side of his neck. Liam's vision blurred, and the world went black as he crumpled to the floor. When he woke up, he was in a hospital bed. "My son. Where's my son?" He shot up, ignoring the dizziness. "Mr. Asher, please calm down. The child is resting in the room next door," a nurse said, trying to steady him. Liam stumbled into the next room. Morgan was lying on the bed, his face pale, and fluid dripping into his small arm. When he saw his father, the brave front he'd been holding crumbled, and he burst into tears. "Daddy, stop. It hurts. They took so much blood. It hurts so bad, Daddy." Liam's heart was ripped to shreds. He rushed over and held his son, tears streaming down his face. It's okay, Daddy's here, my brave boy." Just then, Audrey walked in carrying a fruit basket. The moment Liam saw her, all his grief and rage exploded. He grabbed the water glass, the pill bottle, the apples from the bedside table, and hurled them at her. "Get out!" Audrey dodged the flying objects, her face hardening as she looked at her hysterical husband and crying child. "Liam, get a grip. Let me explain. I don't want to hear it. Get out!" Liam screamed, on the verge of complete collapse. Audrey had no choice but to retreat. "Keep an eye on them," she instructed the nurse at the door. "I'll come back when they've calmed down." She didn't appear for the next several days. From a nurse's chatter, Liam learned she was in the room down the hall, providing round-the-clock care for Cole Morgan as he recovered from his transplant. He heard this and felt nothing. When Morgan was stable, Audrey finally showed up to discharge them. She first arranged for Cole to be comfortably sent home, then came to get Liam and their son. They had barely driven out of the hospital parking lot when a nurse ran up to the car, her face panicked. "Dr. Holt, it's terrible. Mr. Morgan went out to the gift shop, and a group of masked men grabbed him. They threw him in a van. They said he has a bomb strapped to him." Audrey's face changed instantly. Forgetting everything else, she threw open her car door. "Get them home safely," she yelled to the driver. Then she jumped into a security jeep parked nearby and sped off, chasing after the van. Liam found out later what happened. When Audrey arrived, Cole was tied up, surrounded by what looked like sticks of dynamite. Without a second's hesitation, she ran to shield him. At the moment of the explosion, she threw her body over his, taking the full force of the blast. She was critically injured and in a coma. At the chaotic scene, Liam, as her husband, had to handle the paperwork. Exhausted, he was leaving the doctor's office when he ran into Cole, who was waiting outside the ICU. "You see, Liam? She would literally die for me. That's how much she loves me. Why can't you just accept it and get out of our way?" Liam was too tired to even speak. Just then, the ICU door opened. "Who is Cole Morgan?" a doctor asked. "The patient is unconscious, but she keeps calling that name. Are you her husband? You should go in. Maybe your voice can bring her out of it." Cole immediately stepped forward. "I am. I'm Cole Morgan." Liam stood frozen, watching the door swing shut. The last ember of warmth in his chest turned to cold, dead ash. He turned and walked away. Back at the house, he began to calmly pack. A few days later, the official notification arrived from a court. His divorce was final. Holding the thin piece of paper, a strange sense of peace settled over him. Just as he put it away, the phone rang. It was the hospital. Audrey was awake, and she was asking for him. He picked up the phone. Audrey's voice was weak on the other end. "Liam, why haven't you come to see me?" Liam held the receiver, his own voice devoid of any emotion. "With Cole Morgan providing you with such devoted care, what would you need me for?" There was a pause on the line before she continued. "I'm being discharged today. Liam, when I get home, I'll explain everything." "Don't bother." Liam cut her off. "Audrey, there's nothing left for us to explain." He hung up the phone. He placed the final divorce decree on the living room table, took each of his children by the hand, and walked out the door without looking back. At the hospital, Cole, dressed impeccably, was ready to escort Audrey home. "Audrey, let me take you. You're still not fully recovered." "That's not necessary. I can go by myself." Cole bit his lip. "Audrey, you were willing to die for me. Why can't you just divorce Liam? We love each other. We could even take the kids. I'll help you raise them. I'll be good to them." Audrey pressed her fingers to her temples. "Cole, I'm exhausted, and my head is killing me. Please, don't ask me these questions right now. Can you just stop?" Seeing how pale she was, Cole backed off. "Okay, you get some rest. We'll talk later." Audrey took a cab home, her mind in turmoil. She didn't know how she was going to explain the events of the past few weeks. But a part of her, a deeply ingrained part, believed that Liam loved her so much that a good explanation, a little coaxing, would be enough. He would forgive her. They had children, a home, a life together. Buoyed by this complicated, almost arrogant certainty, she pushed open the front door. "Liam? Morgan? Dawn? I'm home." The house was silent. No one answered. A strange unease gripped her. She walked quickly into the living room, and her eyes froze on the table. There, placed squarely in the center, was a document. The bold letters at the top seemed to burn into her eyes like a branding iron. Final decree of divorce. Below it was the stark, official seal of the court and a final, jarring sentence. Upon review, the marriage between Audrey Holt and Liam Asher is found to be irretrievably broken and is hereby dissolved. Audrey froze, standing motionless in the middle of the room. The name on the signature line, Liam Asher, was written in his neat, familiar script. She wouldn't mistake it. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the paper, crinkling it. "Impossible. How could he divorce me?" she whispered to the empty room. She tossed the paper back on the polished wood table, the light slap echoing in the silence. She picked it up again, reading every word. The reason cited was irreconcilable differences, stated with the cold finality of an autopsy report. She thought back over the past few weeks. Liam hadn't seemed happy. It must have been because of Cole. Had he found something out? She quickly dismissed the thought. She was a married woman. Nothing could happen between her and Cole. Liam was overreacting. The thought filled her with a sudden, sharp annoyance. He loved her too much to actually go through with a divorce. This had to be a bluff. She snatched up the phone, her fingers flying across the keypad. "Captain Miller? This is Dr. Holt. I need your help locating Liam Asher." "Thank you." As she hung up, her eyes fell on the decree again. She hesitated for a second, then dialed the courthouse records office. When the clerk answered, she heard her own voice, trembling slightly. "Hello, my name is Audrey Holt." "Dr. Holt." The voice on the other end was immediately respectful. "How can I help you?" "My husband, Liam Asher. Did he file for divorce?" After a brief pause, the clerk answered cautiously. "Yes, Dr. Holt. Mr. Asher filed the petition a month ago. The divorce was finalized this morning. A month ago, Audrey's hand trembled, the receiver clattering faintly in her palm. She remembered that day. It was the day of the incident at the pond, with Liam, the kids, and Cole. She had saved Cole and left the others. Was that why? When he filed, did he say anything? Mr. Asher didn't seem well, the clerk said hesitantly. I think his leg was injured, he was on crutches. He just kept repeating that we needed to expedite the process, that it was an emergency. His leg was injured, but he knew how to swim. A phantom hand squeezed Audrey's heart, so tight she could barely breathe. How did she not know he'd been hurt? In the chaos of that day, all she saw was Cole struggling in the water. Cole couldn't swim, so she jumped in without a second thought. So Liam had been hurt. Was it from saving the children? Or was it because she hadn't saved them, and he'd been hurt doing it himself? Audrey slammed the phone down, plunging the room back into silence. She remembered his quiet withdrawal, his growing distance over the past month. All the details she'd ignored were now stabbing at her, 1,000 tiny pinpricks of pain. She'd thought he was just sulking, that he'd get over it. She knew he was a reasonable man, that he understood her history with Cole. But she had forgotten that even the most reasonable man's heart would turn to ice after watching his wife save another man while he and their children were drowning. A sharp pain flared in her chest. She looked down. A dark red stain was spreading across the front of her white blouse. The wound from the explosion, it must have reopened. Her vision blurred. A ringing started in her ears. She leaned against the table, trying to steady herself, but her legs gave out, and she slid to the floor. When she woke, the sterile smell of antiseptic stung her nostrils. Audrey blinked, her eyes struggling to focus on the white ceiling tiles above. And 4 lines swayed in her peripheral vision. "You're awake," a calm voice said. "How are you feeling?" A doctor was standing over her. Audrey moved her chapped lips, but no sound came out. "You lost a lot of blood, and you're suffering from exhaustion. You need to rest," the doctor noted on her chart. "Thankfully, your husband has been here the whole time." "Husband?" Audrey's head snapped to the side, her heart pounding. She saw a figure by the window, a man in a simple white shirt, his back to her, as he organized something on the table. She reached out a trembling hand and grabbed his sleeve. "Liam," she rasped. The man turned. It was Cole Morgan, his face a mixture of relief and concern. Audrey's hand fell away, the light in her eyes extinguishing. "Audrey, you're finally awake," Cole said, a flash of joy crossing his face before being replaced with worry. "The doctor said you shouldn't get agitated. Lie back down." "What are you doing here?" she asked, pulling her hand back. "Your wound reopened, and there was no one to look after you. Of course I had to come." "Where's Liam?" Audrey interrupted, her eyes scanning the room, searching for the familiar figure that wasn't there. Cole's expression darkened. "He didn't come. Did you? Did you think I was him just now?" Audrey turned her face to the window. "No." Disappointment washed over her, a pain sharper than the one in her chest. She remembered hazily being injured last year. Liam had brought the kids to see her every day, bringing homemade soup, reading to her. Liam had brought the kids to see her every day, bringing homemade soup, reading to her. Everyone at the hospital had praised him. He had been so worried, constantly pestering the doctors about her condition. But now, "Audrey, don't overthink things. Just rest," Cole said softly. "I'll stay with you." She grunted in acknowledgement and closed her eyes, saying nothing more. She felt an exhaustion that was bone deep, a hollowness in her soul, as if something vital had been carved out, leaving only a cold draft. Cole sat quietly by her bed. As night fell, the room was lit by a single dim wall lamp. Audrey's sleep was fitful, her dreams filled with Liam's cold, distant face. She woke with a start and saw Cole asleep in the chair, his head resting on the edge of her bed. He looked worn out. A flicker of pity stirred in her. She couldn't deny her bond with him. Caring for him felt like second nature. But had that instinct, that habit, unknowingly destroyed her life with Liam? She closed her eyes, trying to force the thoughts away. Suddenly, she felt something soft against her lips. Her whole body went rigid. She snapped her eyes open. Cole was awake, leaning over her, his eyes burning with a desperate heat as he kissed her. "Cole," she gasped, shoving him away with surprising strength. He stumbled backward, catching himself on the wall. His eyes filled with hurt and confusion. "What's wrong? You told me you still loved me, didn't you?" "I'm sorry," she said, her voice strained. "I'm a married woman. I can't betray my family. You should go home and rest," she added, her tone distant. Cole's eyes reddened. "Liam already divorced you. Why can't we?" "How do you know that?" Her face hardened. It took her a moment to compose herself. He's just upset. He'll be back. Cole's face went pale. Then what about me? What am I supposed to do? I'm tired. I want to rest, she said, turning away. You should go. Sarah will be here soon. Cole stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down his face, but he said nothing more. He turned and quietly left the room. The door clicked shut, and the room was silent again. Audrey stared at the ceiling, the moonlight casting long shadows across the floor, like an impassable chasm. She remembered the first time she saw Liam. He was wearing a white shirt, standing on a small bridge in the park, sunlight in his hair. He was so handsome, so gentle. She had sworn she would cherish him forever. When had she forgotten that promise? She remembered the first time the twins called her mommy. Those warm memories were now sharp shards of glass, twisting in her heart. It was real. She was losing him, and the pain of it was more intense than she could have ever imagined. As dawn broke, Audrey pulled the 4 from her arm. Ignoring the nurse's protests, she walked out of the hospital. She had to find Liam. Whatever it took, she would bring him and the children home. Even if it meant abandoning all her pride, she would pay any price. Maybe, just maybe, he loved her enough. Maybe he and the children were already at home, waiting for her. The train lurched, the sound of its wheels a rhythmic clatter. Liam wrestled 2 large duffel bags down the aisle. Morgan, already nearly waist-high, held his sister Dawn's hand with the seriousness of a grown man. "Daddy, where are we going?" Morgan stopped, his small face tilted up, his expression earnest. He looked so much like Audrey it made Liam's chest ache. He avoided his son's searching gaze, fussing with the boy's collar. "We're going back to my home," he said, his voice feeling distant. His eyes scanned the station platform, landing on a sign that read, "Clearwater." Dawn looked up too. "Does that mean we're leaving Mommy?" The question was a rusty nail driven straight into Liam's temple. He gently smoothed his children's hair before answering. "Daddy and Mommy are divorced now. We're not going back." He paused. "But if you miss her, I'll make sure you can see her. After all, she was their mother." He wouldn't deny her that. Morgan suddenly threw his arms around Liam's waist. "No, we don't miss her. Don't worry, Daddy. I'll help you take care of Dawn." "Me too. I'll protect you and Morgan. No one can be mean to you," Dawn added fiercely. Their determined little voices made his heart ache. A lump formed in his throat, and Liam bit his lip to keep from choking up. He remembered that stormy night at the hospital, after Audrey had stormed out. Morgan and Dawn had stood in front of him, their small bodies a shield, their hands clutching his shirt. At the time, he was still reeling from Cole's reappearance. Now, his resolve to leave Audrey was absolute. Even if it meant raising 2 children alone, he had to be free. Not just for himself, but for them. A sense of release washed over him. The train's horn blared. Liam took his children's hands and boarded the car. The conductor who took his ticket gave him a sympathetic look and helped him with his bags. Liam thanked him, then glanced back at the platform one last time, the city that held the wreckage of his marriage already feeling like a distant dream. He found their seats and settled the children. Dawn was quickly lulled to sleep by the motion of the train, curling up against his side. Morgan stared out the window, fascinated by the passing world. Liam gently wiped a smudge of dirt from his son's cheek. "Daddy, if you're tired, you can rest. I'll watch Dawn," Morgan said suddenly, shifting his sister so she was nestled against him, patting the empty space beside him. "Okay, buddy. I know." Liam pulled a juice box from his bag. "Have this for now. They'll come around with dinner later." Morgan nodded, took the juice, and carefully placed his sisters on the small table between the seats before slowly sipping his own. Liam turned to the window, watching the blur of green fields rush by. They looked just like the fields behind his family's old house in Clearwater. By noon, the smell of food filled the car as a vendor pushed a cart down the aisle. Liam sat up, feeling for the cash in his pocket. "How much?" he asked. "Veggie is $1. Meat is $2.50, the vendor said, lifting the lid to reveal steaming rice and barbecue ribs. Liam hesitated for a moment. The kids were growing. They needed protein. He counted out the money. "2 of the meat, please." Morgan's eyes lit up at the sight of the ribs, but he didn't immediately grab for them. Liam pushed a container toward him. "Go on, eat up. There's more if you're still hungry." Morgan picked up his fork, carefully placed a rib in his sleeping sister's container, then proceeded to move the rest of the meat from his own meal into Liam's. He did it so naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The old woman in the adjacent seat smiled. "That's a good boy you've got there. You're a lucky man." Liam smiled back and moved the ribs back to his son's plate. The woman then pulled an apple from her cloth bag. "Grown in my own yard. They're sweet." Liam thanked her profusely, accepting the apple and splitting it for the children. The woman watched on, nibbling on her piece. "You're a young fella to be traveling with 2 little ones. heading home to family. Yes, back to Clearwater. It's been a long time. Clearwater. The woman's eyes brightened. What a coincidence. That's where I'm from. Which part? Creekwood. Well, I'll be. That's just across the river. She beamed. I'm from Willow Creek. Used to go to the market in Creekwood all the time when I was a girl. Is that old willow tree still by the town square? Liam paused, then nodded. It is. Must be 100 years old by now. I knew it. The woman slapped her knee. They fell into easy conversation, talking about the town, the people they knew. As they talked, the tight knot of anxiety in Liam's chest began to unwind. The train pulled into the station at dusk. The old woman insisted on helping Liam with his bags. When they reached the road that split toward their respective homes, she pressed a wax paper wrapped package into his hand. Homemade oatmeal cookies. It's not much, but please take them. The package was still warm. Liam, unable to refuse her kindness, accepted them. Thank you so much. Don't be silly, she waved and disappeared around a corner. Liam watched her go, then turned toward the village. The familiar stone path was worn smooth. He stopped under the giant willow tree, its branches swaying in the evening gloom. It had been so many years. He unlocked the door to his old family home. The air inside was thick with the smell of dust and disuse, but it felt, strangely, like a sanctuary. Daddy, is this our home now? Dawn asked, tugging on his shirt. It is, Liam said, kneeling to pick a blade of grass from her hair. From now on, this is where we live. Morgan was already inspecting the place. I can help clean, Daddy. A lump formed in Liam's throat. He ruffled his son's hair. Let's eat first, then we can all clean together. He found a usable pot in the kitchen, scrounged up some firewood, and soon had a small fire going in the old stove. He unwrapped the cookies. The smell of cinnamon and oats filled the small kitchen. The children gathered around, their eyes shining. Let's warm these up, he said, placing the cookies on a plate near the stove's warmth. He then started boiling some eggs he'd brought with them. Morgan sat on a small stool, feeding wood into the fire, while Dawn carefully set out bowls. As the firelight danced, Liam looked at the two small, determined figures, and a feeling of peace settled over him. Maybe this would be okay. No Audrey, just him and the kids in this old house. It was a start. When Audrey pushed open the door to her house, the entire space was dark and silent. She paused in the entryway, her gaze sweeping over the living room. Liam used to sit right there on the couch, telling the kids bedtime stories. Their small voices, begging for just one more, seemed to echo in the silence. But the room was empty. Dr. Holt, Sarah, her young assistant, stood hesitantly at the door. I'll be going now, then. The girl, normally so direct, couldn't hide her unease. Is there something else? Audrey's voice was hoarse. Spit out. Dr. Holt, have you noticed that? You haven't been yourself lately? Audrey's brow furrowed. Ever since Mr. Morgan came back, you've changed. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper, but every word was sharp. You nearly died saving him. And last week, when the doctor said he needed a bone marrow transplant, you actually made Morgan get tested. She glanced up, saw Audrey's stony expression, and pressed on. Mr. Asher is his father. That's his flesh and blood. How could you ask a 5-year-old boy to donate his bone marrow? What did you think that would do to him? That's enough. Audrey cut her off, her voice like ice. This is not your place. But Sarah seemed determined. I know I shouldn't say anything, but I was at the hospital yesterday dropping off some files for Mr. Morgan, and I saw him in the stairwell, talking to another man. I was too far away to hear, but he looked just like one of the men who kidnapped him. Shut up. Audrey's fist clenched, the wound on her hand protesting with a sharp pain she didn't feel. She grabbed Sarah's collar, her eyes blazing with a furious, protective fire. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know what kind of person Cole is. Sarah choked, her face paling. I'm not lying, Dr. Holt. I really saw him. Audrey's glare was murderous. After a long, tense moment, she released her. Sarah stumbled back, coughing. Leave, Audrey said, turning away, her voice weary. Dr. Holt, get out. Sarah gave a crisp, professional nod and left. Audrey stood frozen, her chest heaving. Sarah's words were a thorn, digging into a place she refused to examine. She spun around and strode to the children's bedroom. The door swung open to an empty room. The beds were neatly made. The storybooks were gone. She rushed to the master bedroom. Liam's things, his clothes, his books, his worn leather wallet, were all gone. The house was truly, completely empty. Her heart began to beat erratically, a frantic drum against her ribs. They had really left. This wasn't a fight, wasn't the silent treatment. He had taken the children and gone. A wave of panic, cold and suffocating, crashed over her. She gripped the edge of a desk, to stay upright. Her eyes scanned the surface and stopped. Her journal, the dark brown, leather-bound one, had been moved. It was sitting under the desk lamp. She remembered locking it away in the top drawer. Who had moved it? Her breath caught. A horrifying, undeniable thought slammed into her. Liam saw it. Her hands trembled as she opened the journal. The most recent page had a faint crease, as if it had been bookmarked. On it were her most private thoughts. Her confusion after Cole's return, the ache in her heart seeing him look so frail, and the lines she had crossed out and rewritten countless times. Perhaps I never really forgot him. A bomb went off in Audrey's mind. She felt a dizzying wave of panic. She couldn't begin to imagine the pain Liam must have felt reading those words. No wonder. No wonder his eyes had been red-rimmed for weeks. No wonder he looked at her with such profound disappointment. He wasn't just angry. His heart had died. Liam, guilt, sharp and suffocating, threatened to drown her. She had told herself she was just fulfilling a duty to an old friend, never considering that her duty had become a knife she was plunging into her husband and children. Just then, she heard quiet voices from upstairs. It was Cole. Audrey steadied herself. On a strange impulse, she crept silently up the stairs. The voice was coming from the guest room, hushed and frantic. I told you not to contact me again. Audrey is already suspicious. The money? You'll get what I promised you, but you have to guarantee you will never, ever show your faces again. Audrey froze on the landing, the blood in her veins turning to ice. The kidnappers. The money. Sarah's words, Liam's tears, her children's terror. It all flashed through her mind. She remembered Cole's kidnapping, how he'd coincidentally been taken to that remote warehouse. She remembered how, when he was rescued, he barely had a scratch on him. She remembered the flicker of panic in his eyes when he described how the kidnappers were going to kill him. Of course, a chill shot up her spine. For this man, she had nearly lost her career. For this man, she had forced her own son to undergo a painful medical procedure. For this man, she had driven her husband and children from their home, and he was on the phone with their kidnappers. You'd better be smart about this. Cole's voice continued, laced with a venom she'd never heard before. Audrey couldn't take it anymore. She kicked the door open. The door slammed against the wall with a deafening crash. Cole jumped, the phone clattering to the floor. He spun around, his face a mask of terror, and saw Audrey standing in the doorway, her expression as black as a thundercloud, her eyes radiating a cold fury that could flay a man alive. Hey, Audrey, what are you doing home? He stammered, shrinking back. You didn't tell me you were coming. Audrey advanced on him, each step a heavy thud on the floorboards. She loomed over him, her voice utterly devoid of warmth. Who are you talking to so late at night? Just a friend. Cole stammered, his eyes darting around the room. A friend. Audrey's laugh was a sharp, ugly sound. She kicked the phone on the floor toward him. Tell me, what is your relationship with them? Her voice rose, thick with a rage she could no longer contain. That kidnapping. You staged it, didn't you? Cole's face went white. He shook his head frantically. No. Audrey, let me explain. It's not what you think. They were threatening me. They said if I didn't cooperate, they would hurt you and the children. Hurt the children? So you were protecting us? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Do you have any idea that I nearly died saving you? She grabbed his wrist, her grip like a vice. And what about the pond? Who pushed Liam and the children into the water? Based on what she knew of Liam, he would never have been so careless near water with the kids. And the timing, the coincidence of Cole falling in at the exact same moment. The more she thought about it, the less sense it made. I didn't. Cole shrieked, tears springing to his eyes. He slipped. Why would I push two little kids? Audrey, you have to believe me. And the bone marrow. Audrey's gaze grew colder. You knew Morgan was only 5. You knew a donation could affect his growth for the rest of his life. Why did you hint to the doctors that he was the only suitable match? I didn't. The doctors said it. Cole struggled against her grip. I just wanted to live, Audrey. Is it so wrong to want to live? Want to live? Audrey looked at his tear-streaked, remorseless face and felt a wave of disgust. She remembered Liam, begging her not to go through with it, his face pale with terror for their son. Her heart twisted with regret. You're not wrong, she said, slowly releasing him. Her voice was terrifyingly calm, a quiet sea before a tsunami. I was the one who was wrong. Wrong to be so blind. Wrong to be so foolish. Wrong to give her heart to a monster. I made a mistake, but I did it because I love you. Cole pleaded. When I found out you were married, I couldn't sleep. Why should Liam get to have you? It wasn't fair. She just stared at him. The tears that had once moved her now just made her sick. I may have had feelings for you once, she said, her voice flat. But you should never have involved my children, Cole. Hearing this, Cole panicked, grabbing her sleeve. I was confused. Please forgive me, Audrey. I know I was wrong. Her eyes were red, but held no tears. Looking at his familiar face, she saw only a stranger. Crack! The sharp sound of her hand connecting with his cheek echoed in the room. Consider us even, Cole Morgan, for my own spectacular lack of judgment. Her hand throbbed. Cole staggered back, a bright red handprint blooming on his face. He stared at her, stunned, as if he couldn't believe the woman who had cherished him, who had never said a harsh word to him, had just struck him. He stumbled, his foot catching on the leg of a table. As he fell, his hand knocked over a water glass. It shattered on the floor. The side of his face landed on a large, sharp piece of glass. A deep gash opened from the corner of his eye to his jaw, and blood began to pour down his neck, staining his white collar. He cried out in pain and clutched his face, looking up at her. Audrey didn't even flinch. She turned, walked to the door, and spoke to the security guard she'd summoned. Take him away. Her body swayed, and she tasted blood in the back of her throat. She leaned against the wall, surveying the empty room, and for the first time, truly understood the magnitude of what she had lost. It was her home, and no amount of regret or misplaced duty could ever bring it back. The phone rang. It was Sarah. We found him. Audrey gripped the receiver, her voice trembling. Are he and the children safe? They are. They're in a town called Clearwater, Oregon. Good. Thank you. She was going to find Liam. She was going to find her children. No matter where he was, no matter if he ever forgave her, she was bringing them home. This time, she would not let go. Liam closed the storybook. The two small heads on the pillow next to him were still. He gently tucked the covers around their shoulders. By the dim light of the single lamp, he pulled out a pencil and a newspaper and began circling classified ads. He'd had some poetry published in a literary journal years ago and had saved the payment. Now, with two children to support, he needed a real plan. He copied down addresses and contact numbers with meticulous care. Then he pulled a wooden box from under the bed, filled with years of manuscripts. He selected a few poems and a short story, folded them neatly, and placed them in an envelope. The house was quiet, but he couldn't sleep. He tried not to think about the past, but the memories swirled in his mind, relentless. It was nearly dawn before he finally drifted off. He woke early, checked on the still sleeping children, and slipped out of the house. He found the post office and was just sliding the envelope into the mail slot when he heard a commotion nearby. A group of men were tacking a sign to a bulletin board. The black letters on red paper were impossible to miss. Now hiring. Radio announcer. High school diploma required. Experience preferred. $30/month. $30? A man in the small crowd whistled. That's not bad money. A skinny man marveled. Yeah, but you need a diploma. Not many of those around here. Another commented. Liam's heart skipped a beat. His hand tightened on the strap of his bag. He not only had a high school diploma, but he'd briefly worked at his college radio station. He took a step closer. The words on the notice seemed to shimmer in the morning light. He took a deep breath and approached one of the workers. Excuse me, he said. I'd like to apply for that. The young man looked him up and down. You got a diploma? Ever been on the air? Yes, Liam nodded. And I write my own material. You meet the qualifications, the man said, pulling out a small notebook. But we need a letter of reference from the town council. Go home and wait for now. We have to report all applicants. A reference. Liam's voice trailed off. He just moved here. He barely knew anyone. Where was he supposed to get a letter of reference? Liam, wait up. A familiar voice called from behind him. He turned to see the kind, older woman from the train. Mrs. Peterson, her hair neatly combed, beamed at him. What a coincidence seeing you here. Liam hurried over. Mrs. Peterson, what are you doing here? Just putting in my retirement papers, she said, patting his arm. I saw you over here. Looking for a job? He nodded sheepishly and explained the situation. Her eyes lit up. Oh, that's no problem at all. I can vouch for you. Come on, I'll take you. Before Liam could protest, she was leading him down an alley to the back of the building. The station manager was a stout, middle-aged man hunched over a ledger. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Peterson announced, her voice booming. This young man has a diploma and experience. He's perfect for the job. The manager looked up, adjusting his glasses. Well, if you're vouching for him, Mrs. Peterson, that's good enough for me. He pulled out a form. Can you start today? We got an announcement that needs to go out this afternoon. Liam was stunned. Yes, he managed, nodding quickly. Yes, I can start today. Good, Mr. Henderson stamped the form. Come by tomorrow to get your official papers. Stepping out of the office, the sunlight felt warm and full of promise. This time, you have to let me cook you dinner, Liam said, his voice full of gratitude. All right, son. This time I accept, Mrs. Peterson chuckled. As they neared his house, they saw someone standing in the yard. It was a woman in a simple blue work shirt, and she was holding both of his children's hands. Liam's heart seized. He broke into a run. Dawn! Morgan! Daddy! The two little ones let go and ran to him, throwing their arms around his legs. This lady said you went out, so she stayed with us so we wouldn't be scared. The woman turned, a kind, gentle smile on her face. I'm Clara Vance from the town council. I was passing by and heard the children crying, so I stopped to check on them. Liam finally relaxed, a wave of embarrassment washing over him. Thank you so much. Please come in. I just bought groceries. You must stay for dinner. Clara waved a hand. No, thank you. It was nothing. I have to go check on the irrigation project. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. As she walked away, Mrs. Peterson sighed. Such a good woman. A hard life, though. What do you mean? Liam asked. She lives just over there. The older woman gestured to the house next door. Married less than a year when her husband died of a sudden fever. She never remarried. Daddy, the lady gave me and Dawn orange candy, Morgan said, holding up a small, wrapped sweet. Dawn nodded. She said we can come over and play anytime. Liam looked at his children's happy faces and felt a warmth spread through his chest. On payday, Liam was walking home with the kids when he saw a figure standing at his gate. The familiar, crisp uniform and white shirt underneath were unmistakable. It was Audrey. Mommy, it's Daddy, Dawn shouted, breaking free and running toward her. Morgan hesitated for a second, then followed. Audrey knelt and wrapped them in her arms. Mommy, where have you been? I made lots of drawings for you, Dawn whispered. Morgan stood beside her, his small hand gripping her pant leg. His lips pressed into a tight line, but his eyes were red. Liam stood where he was, the smile on his face gone. Look, Mommy, this is my drawing, Dawn said, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. This is you, this is Daddy, this is Morgan, and this is me. We're flying a kite. On the paper were 4 wobbly stick figures holding a line. The sky colored a brilliant blue. Audrey swallowed hard, her hand trembling as she took the drawing. As her thumb brushed over the figures, a tear fell, blotting the ink. Morgan, take your sister inside. Liam's voice was quiet but firm. Mommy and I need to talk. Morgan looked from his father to his mother, then took Dawn's hand and led her toward the house. Dawn looked back over her shoulder. Mommy, you're not leaving, are you? We can all have dinner. Audrey just waved, not trusting her voice. When the door closed, she stood up and faced Liam. Liam, she began, her voice hoarse. What do you want? He asked coldly. I don't want a divorce, she said, taking a step forward. Come back home with me. We can start over. Liam finally met her gaze, his eyes as cold and still as a frozen lake. That's not going to happen. Why? She pressed, a note of desperation in her voice. Is it because of Cole? I can send him away. Make sure he never bothers you again. I can. It's because of him, and it's not. Liam cut her off, a faint, self-mocking smile on his lips. At first, I thought he was just some ghost from your past, something you never got over. We were married, we had kids. I thought that would be enough. But then I realized, you never let him go. He remembered all the times Cole had come to visit, casually mentioning a craving for some obscure pastry from a bakery across town, and Audrey would drop everything to go get it. He remembered the locked journal in her study, the one he'd stumbled upon by accident, filled with love letters to a memory. He remembered the name she called out one night when she had too much wine, and it wasn't his. I'm done lying to myself, he said, his eyes dropping to the ground. You and him, you belong together. I'm setting you free. No. Audrey's heart plummeted. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Liam, it was my fault. I was confused, I was weak. But I see clearly now. It's you I want. It's this family. Her voice was a plea. Please, just give me one more chance. She tried to hug him, but as her arms went around his waist, he pushed her away forcefully. He took a step back, putting space between them, the chill in his eyes making her shiver. Audrey, he said, each word precise and sharp. The moment you chose to save Cole Morgan and leave me and our children in that water, my love for you died. As he spoke, Liam could almost feel the icy grip of the pond again. The kids had been screaming for her. He'd called her name until his throat was raw, but all he'd heard were her footsteps running away with another man. Later, she'd given him excuses. Cole was fragile. She had no choice. But some wounds, once inflicted, never heal. If you want to see the children, we can arrange a schedule, he said, turning back toward the house. But don't come here again. The door shut with a solid thud. The lock clicked into place. Audrey stood alone in the yard, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from her body. The evening wind rustled the leaves, carrying a deep, biting chill. Her heart ached with a regret that had come far too late. Over the next few days, Audrey started showing up anyway. When Liam went to work at the station, she would arrive with groceries and cook for the children. Her cooking was mediocre, but the kids were thrilled. When he came home in the evening, she would be waiting at the gate with them, their faces alight with a joy he hadn't seen in months. "Daddy, Mommy took us to the movies," Dawn announced, jumping into his arms. Liam looked at the bags of food in Audrey's hands, then at his children's shining eyes, and the harsh words he wanted to say died on his lips. He knew how much they missed their mother. That evening, the dinner table was laden with pot roast, buttered vegetables, and tomato soup, all bland, comforting dishes. Liam's fork hovered over his plate. He ended up just eating rice. She still had no idea what kind of food he actually liked. "Is it not to your taste?" Audrey noticed, pushing the pot roast closer to him. "I thought you liked." "Let's just eat," he interrupted. Audrey fell silent. After dinner, she followed him out into the yard. The moonlight cast long shadows on the ground. As he took down the dry laundry from the line, she spoke. "Liam, we need to talk." "Fine. I know what I did was wrong," she said, her voice low with remorse. "And I swear, I will never let you or the children get hurt again. Let's remarry, please. I got rid of Cole. He will never bother us again." Liam straightened up, his expression unreadable. "Audrey, some things can't be fixed by a marriage certificate." He wasn't just talking about trust. He was talking about a heart that had slowly frozen over, night after lonely night. Audrey looked into his eyes and found she had nothing to say. Just then, frantic footsteps approached the gate. It was Sarah, her assistant, breathless. "Dr. Holt, there's an emergency. You have to come back to Philadelphia immediately." Audrey frowned, looking at Liam with undisguised reluctance. "I'll be back tomorrow to see you and the kids." Liam didn't reply. He just turned and continued folding the laundry. He waited until he heard the gate click shut before he finally stopped, letting out a long, slow breath. When Audrey got back to her house, the yard was full of neighbors, whispering amongst themselves. "I bet she was having an affair. Wouldn't surprise me. I saw her with that other man myself. Poor Liam, he's such a good man. This is just awful." The gossip hit her like a physical blow. She pushed through the crowd and saw Cole, disheveled and wild-eyed, sitting on her front steps. When he saw her, he leaped up, pointing an accusing finger. "Audrey, you can't do this to me. How could you lock me away? That's enough." Audrey's face was a thundercloud. Looking at the man she had once cherished, she felt nothing but disgust. "I told you, we are done. If you cause any more trouble, you'll regret it." She turned to the hospital security officers who had escorted him. "He's mentally unstable. Take him for evaluation." Cole started screaming. "No, don't touch me." He struggled, but they quickly subdued him and dragged him away. "Where are Liam and the kids? A neighbor, Mrs. Gable asked kindly. At the mention of Liam, Audrey's expression softened slightly. "He's visiting family. I'll be bringing them home soon." "Good. He works so hard with those two. You kids need to take care of each other, Mrs. Gable said before heading home. Audrey went inside, shutting the door on the noise and the stairs. She walked to her desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a photo of Liam from their wedding day, a small red flower pinned to his lapel, his smile so warm it could melt snow. She traced the outline of his face with her fingertip, a heavy, suffocating weight settling in her chest. She finally understood what she had lost, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she could never get it back. A sharp knock echoed through the house. "Dr. Holt?" A formal letter of reprimand was just delivered from the board. "They need you at the hospital right away." Audrey's brow furrowed, a sense of dread creeping over her. "What reprimand?" "I'm not sure of the details, ma'am. They just said it was urgent." Audrey drove back to the hospital. When she pushed open her office door, she found Sarah standing by the desk, her face pale, clutching a document with an official-looking red seal. "Audrey," Sarah's voice trembled as she handed it over. "This just arrived." Audrey snatched the paper. As her eyes flew across the page, her expression hardened. The document was a formal censure, citing conduct unbecoming of a department head, damaging the hospital's reputation. Her head snapped up, her knuckles white as she gripped the letter. "What is this about?" "It's Cole Morgan," Sarah whispered. "He filed a formal complaint with the ethics board. He claims you were engaged in an extramarital affair with him, and that you used your position to grant him improper medical privileges." Clang! The heavy-duty stapler she'd been holding hit the desk. Audrey's chest heaved, a white-hot rage roaring to life within her. She couldn't believe it. The man she had protected, defended, even considered destroying her own marriage for, had turned on her with such vicious, calculated cruelty. That bastard, she hissed. She thought of his tear-streaked face, of all the times she'd fought with Liam to defend him. Her heart twisted with a sharp, agonizing regret. In that moment, an image of Liam surfaced in her mind, unbidden. Liam, waiting for her at the dinner table. Liam, patiently reading to the kids. Liam, sitting by her bedside when she was sick. He had given so much and had never asked for anything in return. Audrey pressed her fingers to her throbbing temples. She hated Cole for his betrayal, but she hated herself even more for her own blindness. She drove straight to the hospital director's office. She stood before his desk, head bowed, but before she could speak, he sighed. "Audrey," the director said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I know how much this hospital means to you, and you've done incredible work here, but you can't neglect your family." She looked up, her lips tight. "Sir, it's not what it looks like. Cole Morgan is." "That's enough." He held up a hand, his tone final. "Whatever misunderstanding there may have been, this is a wake-up call. I want you to go home and think long and hard about what it means to be a wife and a mother. The censure stands. We'll talk again when you've figured things out." Audrey opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes told her it was useless. She left his office in a daze. She found her administrative head. "File for an extended leave of absence for me. Indefinite. Ma'am, with this censure on your record." "Just do it." She had only one thought in her head: get back to Clearwater. Find Liam. This time, she didn't care what he said, what he did. She was bringing him and their children home. The train ride was a long, rattling journey through the night. This was her second time coming here, to this place Liam rarely spoke of. She'd always assumed the memories of his deceased parents were too painful. Now she realized it was just another thing she'd never bothered to ask, another piece of him she'd never known. She stepped off the train into the blinding morning sun. Without stopping, she headed for Liam's house. She was still a block away when she saw him walking out of his yard with the children. He looked worried, and next to him stood another woman, tall and poised, speaking to him in a low, comforting voice. What sent a bolt of pure rage through her was the sight of the woman's hands, holding each of her children's. That woman was holding her children, her babies. Reason evaporated. A primal fury took over. She stormed toward them. Before the woman could even react, Audrey swung, her hand cracking across the stranger's face. The woman cried out, stumbling back and falling to the ground. The twins, shocked and terrified by the sudden violence, burst into loud, wailing tears. Audrey stood over the fallen woman, her eyes blazing, her chest heaving. "Audrey, are you insane?" Liam shouted. He rushed to help the woman up, then turned to shield the crying children with his body, glaring at Audrey with utter disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" The woman, Clara, wiped a trickle of blood from her lip and stood, placing herself between Audrey and Liam. "Whatever your issue is, it's with me. Don't frighten the children." "Who are you?" Audrey spat, pointing a trembling finger. "And why are you holding my children?" Liam pulled the kids tighter against him, his voice like ice. "Audrey, we are divorced. Who I'm with, and who holds my children, is no longer any of your business." "Divorced?" The word hit her like a punch. "I never agreed to a divorce. You signed the papers." Audrey took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to regain control. She held a hand out to Liam. "Liam, I know I was wrong. Come home with me. We can start over. Please, don't you talk to my daddy like that." Before her hand could touch him, two small voices piped up. She looked down. Her children were peering out from behind Liam's legs, their faces filled with fear and defiance. Her hand froze. Her heart felt like it had been stabbed. These were her children, and they were looking at her like she was a monster. "Morgan, Dawn. It's me. It's Mommy." Crack. The sound was sharp, clean. Audrey stumbled back, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. She stared at Liam in shock. His eyes were red, his whole body was shaking, but his jaw was clenched, holding back tears of his own. "Audrey, you don't deserve to be their mother," he said, his voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Morgan's body has been trying to recover from that bone marrow donation for weeks. He keeps getting sick. It's been Clara who's been helping us find doctors, getting us medicine. Where were you? You did this to him, Audrey, and I will never, ever forgive you." Her gaze followed his to their son. Only then did she truly see how pale Morgan was, his lips bloodless, his small frame trembling slightly. They said it wouldn't affect him. How could this? She took a step forward. "What's wrong with him? I'll find a doctor." She reached for Morgan, but Liam blocked her path. "Go away, Audrey. I don't want to see you again." Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her throat felt like it was closing up. All her anger, her excuses, her regret. It all dissolved into a dull, silent agony as she looked at her son's pale face. Liam didn't look at her again. He turned to Clara. "Clara, let's go." Clara nodded, gently taking the children's hands. She shielded them as they walked past Audrey, the twins' soft sobs echoing in the quiet street. Audrey stood frozen, watching them walk away until they disappeared around the corner. The autumn wind swept through, carrying a bitter chill. She slowly sank to the ground, burying her face in her hands as the tears she had held back for so long finally came, a hot, useless flood of remorse. At the local clinic, Liam settled Morgan into a small bed. The boy was already half asleep. Dawn had cried herself to sleep in his arms. Clara came into the room, her voice soft. "The nurse said Morgan is just exhausted. They want to keep him for observation for a couple of days, just to be safe." Liam nodded, his fingers lightly tracing his son's pale cheek. "It's all my fault," he whispered. "If I had just seen who she really was sooner." "Liam," Clara interrupted, her tone firm but gentle. "This is not your fault." She handed him a cup of warm water. "You're raising 2 children on your own while working a new job. You're doing better than anyone could expect. A family takes 2 people. The failure was hers, not yours." Liam held the warm cup, his gaze drifting out the window to the darkening sky. The heavy stone he'd been carrying in his chest for months seemed to shift just slightly. Her words were a release, an absolution he didn't know he needed. Over the next 2 days, Clara was a constant, quiet presence. She brought homemade cookies for the kids, sat with them while Liam rested, and offered a steady, calming support that asked for nothing in return. Liam found himself growing used to having her around. On the day of discharge, Liam went to the billing office. When he gave the clerk Morgan's name, she looked up and said, "The bill has already been paid." "Paid?" he asked, confused. "By who?" As he spoke, he caught a movement out of the corner of his eye. Audrey was standing at the end of the hallway. Their eyes met. Her lips moved, forming silent words. "Liam, I'm sorry." He looked away, took the discharge papers from the clerk, and walked back to the room without a word. Outside the clinic, Clara was waiting in the sunshine, holding 2 brightly colored kites. Morgan's face lit up. "And Clara!" he shouted, running to her. Dawn, looking much better, tugged on Liam's hand. "Daddy, can we fly the kites?" "Of course," Liam said, kneeling to straighten her jacket. "Let's go to the park." Clara was patient, showing the children how to let out the string. She ran a few steps, and the kites caught the wind, soaring into the blue sky. Morgan stood beside Liam, pointing. "Look, Daddy, it's really flying." "It sure is," Liam said. He watched the kite climb higher and higher, and the tight, painful knot of anger and grief that had been lodged in his heart for so long seemed to loosen, to finally drift away on the breeze. "You seem lighter," Clara said, coming to stand beside him. "I think I am," he replied, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. He watched his son cheer as the kite danced in the wind, and saw his daughter, for the first time in a long time, laugh with pure, unburdened joy. The wind whistled softly. Looking at the scene before him, Liam suddenly realized that life always offered a chance to begin again. Like a kite, cut free from a tangled line, you could always find a new sky to fly in. Thank you for tuning in to Clearwater Morning. If you enjoyed the stories and songs, please like and subscribe. And remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn is always just around the corner. This is Liam Asher, signing off.